Late September, Wednesday night, I walked into the Hawthorne Supper Club in Midtown with a reservation card in one hand and a laptop bag in the other. That bag had flown more miles than most people I knew, and not in first class. I wasn't there to impress anyone, just wanted one quiet dinner where nobody needed a favor, an extension, or a signature. I was halfway to the hostess stand when I heard it, Cassidy Whitmore's laugh. Too sharp, too rehearsed, and loud enough to yank every head in the room. Of course it was her. My ex-wife, parked near the bar like it was her own red carpet, arm looped through Ryland Stanton's like he was another accessory. She spotted me, and her face twisted into that half-smile she used to wear right before starting a fight she'd already decided she won. Ryland followed her gaze and gave me that polished PR grin. White teeth, empty eyes, danger underneath. Cassidy didn't waste time. "Toby, still stuck in that little office?" Her voice was syrupy, like she was being generous just acknowledging I existed. Ryland added, "Hey, we can always find you something steadier," tapping the signet ring on his finger like it signed checks by itself. I clocked Kellen Sutter at the same table, banker, parasite, our old crowd's professional gossip sponge. He raised his glass like I was the punchline, and he was toasting the delivery. His wife Noelle sat stiff, eyes down, the kind of silence that came from habit, not shock. Then came the kicker. Cassidy tilted her head and dragged out my old nickname. Champ, all sugar on the surface, razor blades underneath. A couple at the next table froze mid-bite. A waiter slowed down. I felt the heat of eyes doing the math. My 2-year-old blazer versus her diamond-studded everything. I didn't flinch. Didn't throw a scene. Just nodded like I hadn't noticed the jab because my phone was buzzing in my pocket, and I already knew what it was. Rowan Pierce, my deputy, had texted 10 minutes earlier. Whitmore Stanton's pharma buy hit intake. Needs Blackwood sign-off. Meeting set for Friday. Cassidy kept her volume up, like the whole place was her stage. "Some people just never rise," she said, and Ryland chuckled like they rehearsed it. I walked right past them, sat down, ordered steak and club soda, pulled out my phone under the table, and read Rowan's intake summary while they played royalty 5 tables away. 9-figure acquisition, ego on the line, and by Friday, they'd all be sitting at my table waiting for permission. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. I finished my drink, left a tip, and walked out without looking back. I didn't go straight home after Hawthorne. I walked, not aimless wandering, just long enough to bleed off the heat in my chest and get Cassidy's voice out of my skull. The streets weren't quiet, not in Midtown, but I kept my hands jammed in my coat pockets and moved like the noise couldn't touch me. I knew better than to go home angry. That's when you start pacing the carpet and punching air. People who saw what happened tonight probably thought that was the whole story. They saw a guy in a discount blazer getting humiliated by an ex-wife with a newer model on her arm. But they didn't see the split-level life I'd been living for 9 years. They didn't see the persona I built or why I needed it in the first place. When Cassidy and I split, I was 50. Her family didn't just shake hands and wish me well. They buried me. Quietly, strategically. Calls dried up. Meeting invites got lost. Introductions vanished. Nobody said the word blacklisted, but I could feel it. I wasn't broke, but I might as well have been invisible. Nobody wanted to be the first person to take a chance on the guy Cassidy's family decided was over. So I went underground. That's how Larkhaven Advisory was born, out of necessity. On paper, I was operations lead, then compliance coordinator, harmless titles, easy to ignore. The name that mattered wasn't mine. It was Vaughn Blackwood. Vaughn wasn't just an alias. He was armor. A myth I crafted one email, one phone call, one redacted meeting at a time. Nobody ever saw him. They heard him. They signed documents with his name on the bottom. They passed around stories about the closer who didn't need to show up to win. That distance was the point. If they couldn't shake his hand, they couldn't challenge his past. We built it into policy. Strict no in-person protocol, encrypted call-ins, sanitized comms. Clients didn't question it. They liked the mystery. Vaughn Blackwood became the ghost people listened to, and I survived behind him. The funny thing was, I never wanted to stay hidden. But surviving long enough to earn a seat again meant staying quiet while people like Cassidy filled the room. The game started to shift this year, tightened regs around pharma buyouts. Deals over a certain size needed third-party review. Whitmore Stanton's deal crossed that line. They couldn't fast-talk their way around it. They needed someone clean, someone credible. They asked for Blackwood. What Rowan flagged tonight wasn't just a pile of money. It was ego. They stacked the structure with leverage and prayed regulators wouldn't look too closely. Cassidy was betting the same way she always had, on charm, access, and borrowed confidence. I wasn't interested in revenge for its own sake. I was already backing someone better. Sadie Chin, biotech founder. Brilliant. Twice denied the same loans Cassidy's people walk into blindfolded. I'd been helping her from the sidelines, introductions, legal protection, a little funding, because her success would mean something, not just to me, to everyone watching. That night, Mara called. My sister always knows when I'm wound tight. She started in soft, then got stern. Said I was burning myself out chasing someone else's ladder. I let her talk. I told her I was fine. I didn't tell her I own the entire building my little office sits in. I went to bed late, alarm set for 5:10, sharp. I didn't sleep much, not because I was scared, because I knew what tomorrow meant. Either I kept hiding, or I finally stopped apologizing for the man I became. I was barely 2 steps into the office when I saw Rowan already at his desk, sleeves rolled, coffee half gone. The kid didn't beat me in often, but when he did, it meant something was boiling. I didn't ask. I just kept walking toward my corner office on the top floor. I'd find out soon enough. He followed me in without knocking, closed the door with his foot, and dropped a folder on my desk like a cop laying out evidence. It wasn't the Whitmore-Stanton deal. I could tell by the weight and the look on his face. Whatever this was, it had my name in it, or at least one of them. I opened it. Timestamps, system logs, call routing paths, and on the last page, a hand-built timeline that made my stomach tighten before I even finished scanning it. Rowan stood there calm as ever and said it without hesitation. "You're Vaughn Blackwood." No drama, no sarcasm. Just a man stating a fact he'd already accepted. He didn't waste time gloating or poking. He told me he'd suspected it for a while. Noticed patterns I didn't even realize I left. Private files edited at weird hours. Secure calls that always routed through the same fallback line. Blackwood reacting to things nobody had briefed him on yet. Too many coincidences, and Rowan didn't believe in coincidence. I didn't bother denying it. What would be the point? I looked him straight in the eye and gave him the short version. After the divorce, my name got poisoned. Vaughn didn't have baggage. Ghosts don't have ex-wives. He didn't smile, didn't flinch, just nodded and said, "It's messed up that you had to do that." Then he added, "I'm with you. But if we're doing this, we do it clean. No sloppiness. Not now." Right then, he became the only person alive who could move between both versions of me without missing a step. That should have made things easier. But it didn't. It scared me, because secrets are only safe when no one else can confirm them. Rowan sat across from me and opened a second folder. The real reason he got in early. Whitmore-Stanton's updated deal summary. Bigger than I thought. $138 million. Pharma asset priced with a built-in assumption that regulators would move fast. Too fast. He broke it down without using buzzwords. Cassidy's firm was taking on too much debt, leveraging guarantees from family assets, gambling on approval speed they couldn't control. "It's tight," he said. "Way too tight for people who think the world owes them a yes." Then came the twist. "They tried to poach me last quarter," he said. Voice casual, like he was reading the weather. "Offered me more money and a director title." I sat up. "You didn't tell me," I said. He shrugged. "Didn't want to give the impression I was ever considering it. I wasn't." Now he was telling me because he knew what tomorrow's meeting was. A setup. A test of control. And if we walked in blind, we'd get outplayed before we even opened the binder. Before he left, he paused at the door and said, "If you want to stay hidden, I'll protect that. But if you want to stop hiding, tomorrow's the cleanest chance you'll get." He shut the door behind him, and I sat there knowing I couldn't argue with a single word he said. Rowan came back in 5 minutes later with his laptop open and a notepad already half full. We got to work without speeches. That's how we operated. No noise, just focus. We split the day in 2 tracks, prepping for the meeting and quietly probing every exposed nerve in Whitmore-Stanton's setup. Not the deep dive audits. That takes weeks. We were hunting for obvious risks, the kind of cracks people don't see when they think they're invincible. It was Thursday. The meeting was set for Friday at 2 in the afternoon. Rowan walked me through the structure they'd built to push this deal through. Cassidy's camp had pledged real assets, property, equity, even a chunk of a family trust, as collateral. Not just a confidence play. These were hard ties to personal holdings, the kind that scream desperation when you zoom in. Ryland's personal guarantee came through a layered trust arrangement that was supposed to sound airtight. But once Rowan read it out loud, it didn't sound smart. It sounded scared. If someone like me had proposed it, they'd call it sloppy. Coming from Ryland, it was strategic. Same lie, different packaging. Then we hit the part that made my jaw tighten. One portion of Ryland's backing came from a long-term care trust. For his mother, older woman, early-stage dementia, stable care plan, nothing fancy, just her safety net. And he mortgaged it for a pharma deal based on speed and ego. Unbelievable, I muttered, staring at the numbers. Rowan didn't say anything. He didn't have to. That was the moment my frustration turned sharp. There's a difference between making bad calls and using people like pawns. He crossed that line. We called in our PR contact and gave them a short list. Track chatter about Vaughn Blackwood. Track anything that smells like Cassidy trying to spin a narrative. I didn't want headlines. I wanted silence. We were building something that couldn't afford a leak. Find out who was filming at Hawthorne, I told Rowan while I reviewed the contracts. You thinking press? No. Just want to know where the blade might come from if someone decides to twist it. He nodded once and said, Already working on it. We prepped the conference room like a courtroom, no flash, no gimmicks. Just a clean table, fresh water, legal pads at every seat, and soft lighting that didn't try to impress anyone. I wanted them walking into a space where there was no confusion about who held the pen. After Rowan left for a call, I unlocked the drawer I hadn't opened in over 5 years. Inside were 2 nameplates. One said Vaughn Blackwood, the other said Tobin Archer. Holding the second one made something catch in my throat, not because it hurt, but because I remembered what it took to bury it. Around lunchtime, Mara sent me one of those corny memes she loved, stick figures and coffee jokes, and added a line, Stop working so hard for people who don't value you. She didn't know it, but she'd hit a nerve I'd armored over long ago. I didn't respond. That night I stood alone in the office staring at the nameplates again. Not because I was debating the facts. I knew I could dismantle Cassidy's deal by Monday. The question was whether I should. If it blew up, it wouldn't just take her and Ryland down. It'd ripple. Employees, clinics, Sadie's lab. I walked over to Rowan's office and stood in the doorway. Tomorrow, I said. I'm done hiding. He didn't smile. He just nodded. Then we do it right. The next day, they showed up 10 minutes early, like they were there to inspect the furniture. Cassidy wore navy with sharp shoulders, heels that said courtroom not cocktail party. Ryland had that CEO grin polished so bright you could have lit a room with it. And Greer Lasky, lead counsel, moved like the guy who thinks the meeting is just a formality. He talks, everyone nods, deal gets done. Behind them was someone new. CFO, based on the binder in his arms, and the way his eyes kept twitching between the door and the floor. He looked like he hadn't slept in 2 weeks and was living off espresso and sheer denial. Rowan greeted them with zero fanfare and held the door open like he had all the time in the world. Mr. Blackwood will be with you shortly, he said. He didn't blink when he said it, just turned and walked away. Cassidy smirked like she'd won already, like last night's little public act had softened the ground for this one. Her eyes scanned the room like she was mentally picking out where she wanted her next photo op. Ryland rested his arm along the back of Cassidy's chair like he owned both it and her. I stood behind the smart glass for 1 extra minute, not to play power games. I just needed that beat to settle my breathing. This wasn't about a reveal. I wasn't trying to shock them. I was trying to reclaim my name without stuttering. Then I walked in. No fanfare, just one slim folder in my hand. No binder, no team, just me. The second they saw my face, the room went still. Cassidy's whole expression broke and reset. First confusion, then that flicker of recognition, and finally irritation, like someone just scratched the record at her party. Ryland's smile froze at the edges, not gone, but cracked. Greer blinked once and straightened his spine like someone had just changed the seating chart. I took my seat at the head of the table, laid the folder in front of me and looked each one of them in the eye. Good afternoon, Tobin Archer. I let the name hang for a breath. And for the record, I'm Vaughn Blackwood. No gasp, no theatrics, just silence, hard and absolute. Greer leaned forward like he was about to read from a script. We'd like to begin with, we're not doing a performance, I said, calm and flat. We're doing math. Rowan stood near the wall, still as a painting, laptop tucked under one arm. He didn't speak, didn't flinch, just watched. Quiet pressure. Cassidy reached for the only trick she had left. She said my old nickname, soft this time. Champ. It was quiet, almost private. That's how I knew she was rattled. She wasn't trying to humiliate me. She was trying to pull me back into the old rhythm, back when she could still control the tempo. Ryland shot her a quick look, barely turned his head, but it was enough. A warning. I opened the folder and slid the first page across the table to Greer. "This is your timeline," I pointed once. "That approval schedule only works if the regulator fast-tracks you and skips 2 layers of review. Here's the actual timeline." I handed over a second page with a standard model. "This is what happens in the real world." Ryland didn't blink. Cassidy crossed one leg over the other and kept her face still. But the CFO, he finally showed a crack. His brow tightened and he leaned in without realizing it, scanning the margin notes like they were about to slap him. I handed the next set of pages across. "These are your personal guarantees." The room stayed silent. Greer read fast. Ryland leaned back too far. Cassidy didn't move at all. I kept my tone level. "You built this deal on best-case fantasies. If it hits even one speed bump and you don't restructure now, you won't just lose the acquisition. You'll lose the floor under your entire life." Cassidy didn't argue. For the first time in 9 years, she stopped acting like the room belonged to her. Greer cleared his throat and tried again, this time slower, calmer, like he was talking to a client who needed reassurance. He said they appreciated the thorough review and would like to walk through the concerns one by one. I let him speak. I didn't interrupt. I just watched Cassidy's jaw tighten every time he used the word risk. When he finished, I answered in short, plain sentences. No speeches, no heat. "If you close this as structured, debt pressure spikes in about 16 months, I said. "Sooner if the regulator drags. Sooner if the market dips even a little. That's not worst case. That's normal case." Silence. Ryland leaned back and folded his hands like we were at a country club instead of a reckoning. "Toby, let's not make this personal. We all want a good outcome here." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. Personal started the second Cassidy turned me into a joke in public. But I didn't say that. I didn't need to. Cassidy shifted gears, softer voice, controlled expression. "I always wanted the best for you," she said, "even when we disagreed." It was the kind of line that sounds generous until you remember the history attached to it. I didn't argue. I didn't rewrite the past. I just opened the next section of the folder and slid it toward them. "These are revised terms," I said. "Lower purchase price, escrow protections tied to regulatory timing, adjusted close schedule, removal of accelerated bonus triggers that rewarded speed over stability, mandatory reporting thresholds that would force disclosure before problems turned into disasters." Greer scanned the pages and exhaled through his nose. "This is aggressive." "It's survivable," I said. "There's a difference." I looked at all of them before I said the next part. I could refuse sign-off. I could let this collapse under its own weight. That would feel satisfying for about 15 minutes. Then employees lose jobs, clinics lose supply continuity, and your collateral chain drags people into it who never voted for this risk. Ryland's eyes flicked up. "One slice of your guarantee pulls from your mother's long-term care trust," I continued steady. "She didn't sign up to finance a race against regulators." Cassidy flinched. Not dramatic. Just a small break in posture, like I'd tapped glass and found the crack. "I'm not burning down a village to punish 2 people, I said. The CFO finally spoke, voice tight but controlled. "Under your restructure, do we avoid default triggers in a delayed approval scenario?" Rowan stepped in exactly where we'd planned. "Yes," he said. "With adjusted covenants and revised escrow staging, you stay above threshold even with a 6-month delay. We modeled it conservatively." For the first time, their side looked at Rowan like he mattered. Not the assistant, not background noise, a professional with weight. Ryland tried one more angle. "There are future opportunities here," he said. "Relationships that could benefit everyone if we approach this constructively." I met his eyes. "You already tried the stick in the restaurant," I said evenly. "It didn't work. So here's the deal. Sign this, or walk out and deal with what happens next." No threats, just gravity. They read. Pages turned. Pens tapped. Nobody touched the water glasses. Cassidy signed first. Quick, sharp strokes, like speed could hide fear. She pushed the document forward without looking at me. Ryland took longer. His hand was steady at first, then just barely unsteady at the end of his signature. Enough that I saw it. Enough that he knew I saw it. Greer initialed. The CFO signed last, slower than the rest. I gathered the pages, checked each signature, and closed the folder. "We're finished," I said, standing. No handshake. No closing remarks. They left the room quieter than they walked in, and I stayed standing until the door clicked shut behind them. 3 days later, Rowan walked into my office without knocking, tablet in hand, and his eyebrows already halfway up his forehead. He didn't say a word. just turned the screen toward me like a surgeon showing an X-ray. There it was, the Hawthorne video. Cassidy's voice, my face, the whole dining room watching. No intro, no watermark. Just a clipped 32 seconds of her slicing me up with a smile while Rylan nodded like a sidekick. My face stayed calm, which somehow made it worse. I found out like I usually did, with no warning, through forwarded links, automated alerts, and people calling Rowan instead of me. Where did it come from? I asked without looking away. Rowan hesitated. You want the actual source? I nodded once. He exhaled through his nose, slow. Noelle. She filmed it from her seat, sent it to a friend, supposedly just to vent. It got posted, reshared, and then it took off. She tagged me. No, didn't tag anyone, didn't even caption it, just let it go. I sat back in my chair, jaw tight, not angry, not surprised, just tired of being the main character in somebody else's drama reel. The clip moved fast, LinkedIn first, then short-form video platforms, then blogs pretending to care about corporate etiquette. The commentary was a mess. Some people dragged Cassidy for being arrogant. Some called it karma, but not all of it was on her. A few came after me for staying quiet, for not fighting back, like silence made me weak. That part landed differently, because I remembered how hard it was not to snap back in that moment. Holding the line takes more strength than flipping a table. But people don't clap for restraint. They want noise. The damage, though, wasn't about me. It was about timing. Whitmore Stanton was days out from needing regulatory trust. And now there was a viral video of their execs mocking someone in public. Someone who turned out to be the independent reviewer they needed. Not a good look when you're asking for fast-track approvals. Their board moved fast. I didn't attend any meetings, but Rowan's contacts kept him fed. Emergency calls, internal fire drills, legal teams pulling hours trying to clean up a mess made with someone else's mouth. Greer Lasky sent Rowan an email asking for professional discretion. I told Rowan, reply with one line, we have nothing to add. That was it. I wasn't joining their circus, even if I was the act people came to see. Sadie called me late that night, said the noise might scare her smaller investors. I told her straight, stay focused, let me handle the adults. Next morning, I made 2 calls, quiet, targeted, no threats, no press. I made sure Sadie's funding runway stayed intact. That part mattered. Cassidy disappeared online. No posts, no statements. Rylan tried a vague leadership quote. Real power comes from humility, and got torn up in the comments. Kellen made a joke at a lunch meeting and got shut down so hard he left early. I didn't gloat. I didn't replay the video. I didn't even share it. I just sat in my office, looked out at the skyline, and realized something I hadn't before. Revenge doesn't always feel like a headline. Sometimes it's just consequences arriving. Slow, steady, and right on time. The fallout didn't come in fireballs. It came in paperwork. Over the next few months, the consequences stacked up in quiet, grinding ways. Amended filings, revised timelines, added oversight layers, and board members who suddenly remembered they'd always had concerns about Cassidy's tone. Nobody said her name out loud at meetings anymore. They just talked around it like a bad investment they were still trying to unload without looking desperate. Rowan kept me updated with short memos and 2-line emails. He never editorialized, never speculated, just facts. I didn't chase rumors. I let them find their way to me like everything else did. Cassidy tried to spin the whole thing as a setup, claimed I'd tricked them, that I used my position to sandbag the deal. But paperwork doesn't lie. Signatures don't fake themselves. Greer stayed quiet, not out of loyalty, but because he wasn't stupid enough to attach himself to a lie that could cost him his license. Ryland's Skeletons came next. A local business paper dug into one of his turnaround success stories and found numbers that didn't match public records. Nothing criminal. Just enough inconsistency to make investors uneasy. Enough to make Cassidy blow up behind closed doors. Noelle called me one evening, voice small, almost breathless. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean for it to become a thing. I froze. That night. And I hated it after. I hated myself for not doing anything. I believed her. But I didn't coddle her. I'm not your therapist, Noelle. I know. I just needed to say it out loud. She hung up without waiting for approval. Kellen went full parasite. Tried to ride the scandal like it was his own idea. Started telling anyone who'd listen that he always knew Cassidy was reckless. Someone forwarded me a screenshot of him emailing a contact of mine for an intro, called me An old friend. I didn't reply. Then came Mara. She showed up at my office one Saturday afternoon, still in her school psychologist workwear, gray sweater, practical shoes, coffee in one hand. She looked at me like she didn't know who she was looking at. "You let me worry about you for 9 years," she said. "You let me think you were barely scraping by while you were out here running the table." I didn't dodge. I told her the truth. I hid because my name got kneecapped. I stayed hidden because it was the only way to keep building. She folded her arms and blinked fast. Not angry at the success. Angry I let her carry my ghost. "You could have trusted me." I didn't trust the world, and I didn't want you caught in the middle. She sat in my office for 20 minutes without talking. Then she hugged me on the way out like she hadn't decided yet whether she forgave me. That was enough. The final shift came quietly. Rowan heard it first through a legal contact. Quiet filings, nothing public. Cassidy and Ryland started splitting things up. Not over love, not even over betrayal, over debt, over whose signature had exposed them more. Months later, Cassidy sent me an email, 3 sentences long. No apology, just an attempt to rewrite history one more time. I deleted it. Not out of anger, just because I didn't need to read the story again. Even after all the signatures, fallout, and silence, I didn't feel finished. I didn't even feel satisfied. I felt responsible. Because I knew exactly what it was like to be shut out for reasons that had nothing to do with skill. And I knew I wasn't the only one still building in the shadows, waiting for someone to let them in or screw them over. I retired the Vaughn Blackwood name quietly. No press tour, no viral farewell. Just a clean internal memo through our firm's communication channel. A rebrand notice sent to key clients and a few direct phone calls to the ones who deserved more than an email. Most of them already knew, or had guessed. The world didn't blink. The work didn't stop. Then I built something that mattered. We launched the Larkhaven Outsider program. Funding, mentorship, and deal-side protection for people who'd been shoved out of the room by bias, backroom games, or someone else's family money. It wasn't charity. It was insurance for talent that the system had labeled disposable. Sadie Chin was our first public face, not because she was a headline, because she earned it. I made sure the announcement was about her work, her breakthrough, her team, not about me. I've seen what happens when someone gets turned into a symbol for someone else's redemption arc. She deserved better than that. Dorian Hang stepped in as an ally. He was older than me, gruff in a kind way, ran a biotech firm we saved years ago when Blackwood was still a ghost on the phone. When he shook my hand and heard Tobin Archer, he froze. Then he hugged me so hard I felt it in my spine. Said he'd always wondered who Blackwood really was. Said he was glad it turned out to be someone real. His daughter Imogen tagged along. Sharp kid, senior at Cornell, working on a research paper about invisible power structures in private capital. She asked smart questions, didn't pretend to know everything, and didn't act like I owed her answers. I respected that immediately. Rowan took over the logistics like he'd been waiting for the challenge. He structured everything from scratch: clear intake criteria, a transparent vetting process, measurable support plans, no favors, no insider referrals, no cocktail parties, just results. He also made sure we didn't accidentally recreate the same broken club we were trying to fight. He saw it before I did, how fast good intentions can turn into another gatekeeping network for people who already speak the language. One part of the program we didn't talk about publicly was the support for professionals caught in smear campaigns after divorce. Men, women, doesn't matter. You get your name shredded in private, and suddenly no one returns your calls. I knew that pain too well. I didn't slap my face on that part of the rollout. I just funded it and kept the lights on. Cassidy tried to make a move that spring. A high-profile board seat opened up at a firm she once waved into existence with one phone call. This time, the phone didn't ring back. Nobody said it out loud, but I knew the reason. The Hawthorne video hadn't vanished. It was still one search away. I didn't have to lift a finger. The past did the work for me. For the first time in years, I walked into my office and saw my name on the glass, Tobin Archer, and didn't flinch. I didn't brace for someone to tell me I didn't belong, because I wasn't trying to win anymore. I just wasn't hiding. The first formal dinner for the Outsider program happened in early May. No spotlights, no champagne towers, just a clean, quiet room with good food, strong coffee, and zero pressure to impress anyone. Rowan insisted on simple name tags. I backed him. I also set a hard rule: no speeches over 2 minutes. If you can't say it straight, don't say it at all. Mara arrived right before the salad course, hovered near the back like she didn't know whether she belonged or was just visiting. I watched her scan the room with that school psychologist filter of hers, weighing expressions, looking for signs of stress. She didn't talk to me at first. She didn't need to. Then she met Sadie. Saw what we were actually doing. Not theory, not PR, just real people getting real footing. Mara's shoulders dropped like someone had finally lifted a weight she'd been carrying without knowing it. Dorian came in late, wearing a plain gray suit, and hugged me too hard for the occasion. His daughter Imogen stayed close, taking notes like a young reporter until something shifted in her. She closed the notebook halfway through dessert and just watched the room, studying body language like it meant something again. I kept my remarks short. I stood up, tapped my glass once, and told the truth. I got shut out once, not for failing, just for not belonging. The system doesn't reward talent. It rewards access. This program exists to give people room to breathe, build, and not have to beg for it. That was it. I sat down. Later, as people filtered out, Rowan pulled me aside like he always did. They finalized the divorce, he said. Cassidy and Ryland. Deal's fine. Marriage isn't. He said it like a weather report. No heat, no judgment. I nodded once. That was all it needed. 5 minutes later, a message hit my public inbox. It was from Ryland. 3 lines. Polite tone. He asked if we could reset and talk opportunities. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, because I was done being a character in someone else's narrative. I wasn't going back. Noelle caught me by the door. She said quietly, "I'm glad you didn't yell back that night." I looked at her and nodded. She was right. I wasn't proud because I stayed quiet. I was proud because I didn't need the last word. After everyone was gone, I stood in the hallway just outside the conference room and looked at the brass lettering mounted above the door. Tobin Archer, no mask, no alias, just the name I was born with. No one could erase it now. I thought of Hawthorne. I thought of the laughter, the stares, the way it burned. Then I remembered the next day, the table, the signatures, Cassidy's face when she realized the little office was the entire building. That wasn't revenge, that was freedom. Hold up. Can I ask you something personal before you scroll? If you've got the hype button, tap it to support this video and push it to more people, then please subscribe and hit like. It's one click and it matters a lot. Now tell me in the comments, when someone tried to humiliate you, did you stay quiet and let time do the work, or did you fire back on the spot?